is A Day in the Life with Cory Gisselman and Jesse Longsworth. Hello, 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 and welcome back to A Day in the Life, a podcast where we talk about life, faith, and everything in between. I'm Pastor Cory Gisselman. I'm the lead pastor at Noel United Methodist Church in Santa Claus, Indiana. And with me, and I'm not going to say as always, as he pointed out last week, and with me, joyfully, is my friend, my colleague, Jesse Longsworth. Jesse, how's your day going, sir?
Oh man, that made my day. I'm good. I'm good. It's been a good day. I'm Jesse Longsworth. I am the coordinator of children and student ministries at Community of Hope United Methodist Church in the metropolis of Muncie, Indiana, home of the Ball State Fighting Cardinals. Um, yes.
Two things there.
How we doing there?
First, every time you say Metropolis, it just makes me laugh because I think of Superman and just would Superman be at Ball State? I'm like, oh, maybe. Then two, I
That's
saw.
where you got his journalism degree. That makes sense, right?
Sure, we'll go with
The,
that.
the school's known for
But
journalism. I mean,
but
David
the
Letterman,
better
the whole
connection,
shebang.
it's something I was scrolling and saw on Facebook yesterday, 2 days ago, home of the Fighting Cardinals, and no, the Catholic Church is not holding. Uh, they're not fighting and holding conclave in Muncie, Indiana, fighting over who's going to be the next pope. That
That's
is being done
hilarious.
in Vatican City.
Yeah. I just, whenever I think of Ball State Cardinals, I think of that time whenever they were like, they went like 2.5 years without winning a football game or something like that. And Letterman would always talk about it. And he'd say, it's a cardinal. It's the fiercest, like sparrow-sized bird. And he would go off on that. And that's why I said fighting Cardinals. So,
It's fine.
yeah.
Every time I'm an IU fan, and people are like, oh, making jokes. No one even knows what a Hoosier is. I'm gonna lock my dogs out of this room. Hold on.
Okay. Space filler time. Hi, everybody. Yeah. Woohoo. Podcast.
There's a little maybe one day we'll just have enough of that. Can be a little mini ad break where we just throw something in there. Right? But we are on video now, so yes, you saw that I'm in my shorts and t-shirt today, recording with Jesse here. But um, we hope everyone's doing well. Last week we talked about post Easter, and we talked a lot of really some heavy stuff on what that means. And I just want to take a moment to say what we were saying isn't meant to overwhelm you. So we hope that it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm an awful person of faith or awful Christian, because that's what Easter is about. He died on the cross and he resurrected and forgives us. And so I just wanted to mention that. And that came from having a conversation with someone earlier this week about that, how sometimes people can feel that weight of what Easter is supposed to bring next, and that we don't live up to it.
That's fair. I think one of the it's interesting that you say that because over the past couple weeks, I've had people ask me, and this is not the subject of the podcast, so we could delve way deep into this, but you know, or they say something like, I feel like I'm not a good Christian, or I feel like, what does it take to be a good Christian and all
Oh,
that kind of stuff.
welcome.
And I was amazed they were asking me, because, whatever. Anyway, but yeah, it was it's interesting you say that and we have to remember that, and I believe that we are all inherently good in some way or another, but we do fall short at the same time.
Yeah.
And so it's a gentle reminder. I think that Easter is a reminder of that, but it's also a reminder of the joy that comes from the gift.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to be able to find joy in it. You can't
Yes.
let it. You can't let faith, and we hear it in sermons, we hear it in Bible studies. We talk about it like it could easily, if you're not careful, let yourself like live into what doom and gloom Christianity can bring. But that's missing that message, right? Because that's that old. fire and brimstone approach that people mention, right? It was that almost feeling like beat you down approach to faith. You sinned, you've done awful, you've done this. It's like, whoa, yeah, I messed up. I'm sorry. Uh, can I have grace? Can I ask for forgiveness? And the answer is yes. Because with that comes love and that forgiveness and that uplifting feeling that it's supposed to bring. It doesn't mean just discount the need to do good or try the intentional piece of trying not to do something wrong, um, but allowing yourself that same grace that God gives you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that, oh shoot, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, well, we can move on.
Oh, okay. No, I just wanted to mention that because I had a good conversation with somebody about that earlier in the week of, not letting it beat you down that you don't feel the same way as you did on Easter Sunday. It's okay. That's why we
Yeah.
that's why we stay in it. That's why we keep going. That's why that's that seasons of faith that we go through daily, weekly, yearly, all of that. So I just wanted to mention that because we put these expectations on ourselves, right?
Mhm.
As Christians, and it's from maybe, and I know with it being in 2025, it's a lot different than it was 30 years ago, but because we live in a social media world, right? And
Oh,
so
absolutely, we do.
so most things people hear, most things people retain when it comes to faith, politics, news, sports, any activity they love, they hear it in 30 to 45-second clips, right?
That sounds
Facebook
about right.
Reels, Instagram Reels, TikTok, even quick news stories on Facebook as you're scrolling, right? Because they're meant to grab you and pull you in, or just hear that the pieces they highlight the pieces for the audience they're trying to target, right? And
Hmm.
so we hear these things, and if we don't allow ourselves to go little bit deeper than that, we all of a sudden start stacking all of those as expectations on ourselves and faith. Right?
That's fair. Yeah,
Uh,
that is. Man, TikTok, you just mentioned that. Man, I spend way too much on that. I made way too much time on that.
well, here's why it's hard not to now, because the things you enjoy, and we'll say just on the faith side, we'll say
Yeah.
just in Christianity, right? Even churches, faith influencers, podcasters, people that are influencers in good ways, in positive ways when it comes to faith, know where they can reach their target audience, and they're now on TikTok
Yep.
because
Oh,
they know where to
because
reach people.
there's pastors I follow. There's a whole bunch of faith stuff that I listen to on a regular basis on TikTok
Yes, that just
and Instagram and Facebook, and because all of them have an algorithm,
right.
you know. Yeah.
That doesn't, and that's why I don't necessarily think it's bad. It's just we need to recognize it for what it is. Uh,
Yeah.
one thing I talk with my daughter on all the time is she'll say, "Oh, did you see this?" I'm like, "Where'd you hear that?" Because the way she talks about it, I can tell she heard
Yeah.
it in a quick clip. I'm like, "Here's my challenge to you. That's fine to hear that. Before you go start talking about it, go research it yourself." Right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Because there's easily can always be more to it. Sometimes it's what it is, right? But always double check, always research for yourself, and allow yourself to fully learn, and not just go off taglines. It's hard to do that in a
It is.
fast paced world, but it's in that we place those expectations on ourselves. I think one place in which the church as a whole has struggled in connecting with people is not helping people process or work through those expectations, and we place more expectations on the people than we realize we're doing, and we kind of almost leave them on an island to try to understand what all of this might mean.
Yeah, that's fair. Because, I mean, we've shared on this podcast before, if this is your first time listening. I'm in the middle of seminary, and you know, there's concepts of faith and the Bible where I'm reading about it from people who have studied it for a long time, and I'm still like, wait, what? You
Yeah.
know? And so, and for those, and this isn't better or better and less than or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. But for those who haven't done that study, if we expect them to grasp those concepts, I think that's something that we need to look at as church leaders, as you know, yeah, and maybe adjust or be better at explaining or being willing to take the time to sit with somebody and talk about those kind of things or whatever. And I know there's thousands of pastors who do that and do it well,
Right.
but yeah,
Oh, and this can go so deep because I think there's so many fractured areas within churches that we don't take the time to repair.
yeah,
One of them, you know, you've heard me say it before, Jesse, and if you've listened to our episodes before, you've heard me say this, and if you've talked to me before in person, you've heard me say this. I love Sunday morning worship. Love it. Love to sing, even though I can't sing. I love the music. I love preaching. I love being with the people. I love being in connection. Love Sunday mornings. But we get into this habit as a church to say, come here on Sunday mornings, come to this Bible study, come to this thing, come to us, come to us, come to us. And what we inherently build up is an expectation that you need to come here to understand your faith.
yeah. Well, and to go a little bit further than that, I think it's we develop that thing where you have to come here for us to care about you.
Yes. Oh, love that. Oh, that's good.
And because one of the things, whether you agree with the theology or not, totally up to you. But one of the things I loved about my first ministry that I worked with was they were all about meeting students where they were,
Yeah.
not expecting them to come to us. Now we had meetings and we had, we called it club, which was basically our church, quote unquote.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, we went to sporting events, we went to lunchrooms, if we were allowed in the school, obviously, all that kind of stuff. And we met students where they were, not expecting them to come to us.
Yeah.
Now, eventually they did, but because you develop relationships and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I love about like what I was doing this year at Ball State, because every Thursday I'd go to one of the eating areas and just hang out. And I got to know those students so well. And none of them that sat at that table ever graced the doors of Community of Hope.
Well, that's not what it's about.
It wasn't what it was about.
Yes, connection and worship is important. Being present is an important part because there's connection there, right? And there's
Yeah.
you lean on each other. You're a community of
Hmm.
faith in that aspect, and I don't want to minimize that part. But if we are only focused in that part, there's so many people that will never get to that part with us
Hmm.
because
Exactly.
we're not in relationship with them.
Yep. 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 Yep.
There's so many studies done. I'm not going to sit here and try to quote numbers because I don't know them all, but you can go do the research. I've done the research. I've seen the stats, the numbers, the studies. And one of the most overwhelming things that people that are unchurched say, that have left the church, has said is that they didn't know me. They wanted my money, they wanted my attendance number to count, but they didn't know me.
Wow.
And it's true. I mean, you can't
It
say it enough, but
is.
it's true.
It is. As much
Um,
as we don't want to admit to it, it is.
you know, the church has this expectation, and the United Methodist Church is the same way. We're both UMC, but we even say it says it in our membership vows, right? Well, you support this church through, right?
Hmm.
So we're asking them to support the church's mission, and we focus on that point. But in that same membership vow, we are committing to support them as well. And so we have to ask ourselves, is the church living up to its part of the expectations to support the person? And I'm not talking just members. I use that as an example, right?
Yeah.
To say the church has expectations that I feel we have fallen short on more than on one occasion.
I was sitting here thinking as you were saying that about the overall attitude of most churches whenever somebody is in the hospital. And unless you are a really good friend of that person, like you're in a group together or what, they're your people. The only person that really visits is the pastor. And if we are, as you were saying, we take a vow as the church to support that person, it probably should be different than that.
I agree, and I want to give two caveats to this real quick. One, there's some churches that are very good at some of these things. I don't want to take that away.
Yes,
If
absolutely.
you're listening, this isn't about one church or another. This is just from experience of churches as a whole, right? I
Yeah.
want to make sure
Big C
we're
church.
doing that. What?
As we say in the industry, the big C church.
The big C church. Yes, this is a
Yes.
when we talk on this podcast, we are talking really from an overall standpoint, from
Yes, we are.
conversations we've had with people, things we've heard,
Hmm.
seen, researched, learned.
Yep.
Um, so Jesse, I also want to say I agree with you about like visitation at the hospital, right?
Yeah.
Now, should the pastor be the first or one of the first people there? Probably.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
I'm not
also at the
saying
same time, and I've experienced this. Um, well, first I'm saying, yeah, have I failed at visitation before? Yes, I admit to that, and I own that, and I feel awful about that. Yes, in my really still early years of pastoral ministry, I have failed at that at times, and I've apologized, and all that. But at the same time, there's been instances where I didn't even know, right?
that's fair.
And so this is where those expectations come in. If there's certain expectations understood, one, be willing to be graceful and apologize. Be
Hmm.
willing to say, "Hey, I messed up and I apologize." But also, if certain expectations are held of pastors, of congregation members, of church leaders, of anything, then everyone has to do their part,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But
Absolutely.
but in that, I think there can be various reasons why. I mean, if A, B, and C happened where the church has had these expectations and didn't live up into them, then person A, when time comes for a notification or for a ministry or for something to support the church, they are less likely to support it.
Yep.
Right? Um, we have this thought process, I guess is what we could call it, where, oh, yes, become a member. Great. They become a member. You have the ceremony. We support you. You support the church. Uh, awesome. You attend service. Hey, we got this Bible study. Great. Well, outside of that, how do we do it? How do we understand where people want to be involved and how people become involved? Uh, we've seen this major decline in, I'm going to use the example of people's call to ministry and becoming pastors. You used to be churches would support, like build people up with their churches, and they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, let's have that conversation. Let's talk about it."
Yep.
And they support
Yep.
them in ministry and moving them forward. We're not seeing that much. It, it's a lot less than it used to be. Now that's a
Yeah.
whole nother rabbit hole. But Jesse, you and I were talking before. It's not just in pastoral ministry, right? So when we're talking about expectations of that churches have for congregation members, expectations that members have for churches or pastors. I mean, we're talking youth pastors, children's pastors, right? Worship pastors,
Hmm.
right? The church says, yes, we have these expectations of you to lead, but sometimes, and I did youth ministry for 6 years, it can feel like the the ministry in the back of the room kind of feeling.
Yeah, as somebody who's in children, youth, and college ministry, um, I feel that sometimes, and I know this isn't the the purpose, or let me rephrase. I work for Community of Hope, and Community of Hope loves the kids, the youth, and the
Yes.
college kids. They do. They do. They absolutely do. But somebody coming in from the outside and seeing that the youth room is in clear in the basement away from everything else, that's a visual.
Yes.
It is. I don't think whenever they established that, because it was that way whenever I got there, I don't think whenever they established that they thought of that. I don't think that was the I don't think that was a like a conscious thought that what this says about our youth ministry. You know what I mean?
No, I agree.
I
Yeah.
don't think they thought of that. And you know, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not crucifying the church that I work for at all. They are very supportive, and I want to reiterate that they are. I would say that if we weren't recording right now, you know, they are. Um, I know Cory's laughing. I don't want this to come across as like a suck up session or anything like that to my bosses if they listen to this, but um, no, they are very supportive. They're not the only church that does that, though. Countless churches have that.
Well, I think a good way to put this on too, Jesse, is the reason we bring it up this way, and I don't, you know, we've had many discussions about ministry, youth ministry within our own churches, and um, I don't see it that way for you. What I'm referring to as well in this is everybody. Here's a good way to put it. I'm a younger pastor, right? Every church wants
Mm-hmm.
a young, energetic, youthful pastor,
Yep.
right? I remember when I
With
first
30 years of experience.
one of my appointments that was with a church that I'm no longer at. It's no longer part of the UMC. You know, I got appointed there, and I'm this younger, youthful pastor. And how are you going to grow the church? It's a tough question to ask the pastor because it shouldn't be the weight of the pastor to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to use that same analogy for youth ministry. Right? If you go into any leadership meeting, if you go into any church, if you go into any charge conference for a church, if you go into any ministry planning session, ministry planning meeting, and you say, yes, what do you guys think about us needing to have a youth ministry? Every single person there's going to say yes. But not every single person in there is going to be willing to do what is necessary to support that youth ministry. That's
That's
not to be
true.
mean about it, but they may not have the passion to do it. They may not have the ability to do it. But if we have 20 people saying yes, we need to have youth ministry, but we only have 3 people supporting to make the youth ministry happen and be successful and be fruitful and reaching kids, then we have this imbalance that is very hard to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Agreed. And don't get me wrong. I mean, middle school, high school ministry is tough. It
Oh,
is.
yes.
I mean, you know, dealing with sixth graders takes a special mentality. I mean, let's be honest, it does. And even that's middle school is my favorite age to deal with, and we can talk about that later. But no, it is, and it takes a special mentality. So I don't, and to grow to expound on what you just said, Cory's not saying that he's not trying to shame anybody into
No.
anything, and it's just one of those things where, you know, if you're if you want something, you need to be willing to put the effort in to do it. And
Absolutely.
like for instance, you know, I talked about where the youth room is at Community of Hope. We've had many talks of moving it.
Yep.
We have. We just the way our space is set up to have as much space as we do, there's not really another space in the building for it.
Right.
And so and I'm fine with that, you know, and I think the students are cool with it. It's not like it's a huge deal. But I'm just talking from the outside looking in, it could appear that way for clarity on what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so and I do know that like you said, if you are a church who's wanting to start a youth, for instance, last year at annual conference, I led a couple breakout sessions about like youth ministry and what, just a conversation about youth ministry. And most of the people that were in there were from smaller churches who don't have a strong or don't have a youth ministry. And what I told them was, you need a couple people who are passionate about it and just do something.
Yes.
Just do something for the youth, for the kids. And if it fails, do something else.
Yes.
Just because the community wants to see you caring about them.
Yes.
Period.
I can't disagree. You said something very important there. This is not about shaming anyone, but Jesse and I have said from the very beginning of this podcast, we talk about the difficult conversations, the difficult things that sometimes we're not willing to talk about. And part of that comes with, if this qualifies under your church, then maybe you have to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah.
This is just us saying, you have to have the hard conversations on, is this working? Are we doing it right? Are we empowering people to be a part of it? Are we asking the right questions? And are we doing the right things? If we keep trying the same thing over and over, it's not working. What are we doing?
But Cory, we've always done it that way.
Oh, get out of here. If you say that again, I'll end this podcast real quick. I have the meeting power. But
sorry, listener, I'm sorry. I had to say it because that's me and Cory have talked before many times about that phrase is one of our least favorite in ministry.
Well, and I think we got to look at it too, Jesse, is we as church leaders, right? Or as in church leadership circles, when you're like, yeah, we want this youth ministry, and we say, okay, yeah, let's do it. Then all of a sudden, the entire weight is put on the youth pastor. Let's say you, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
But should that be the expectation of the youth leader, of the youth pastor, of the youth director? If this is a church ministry, you are planning it, you are supervising it, you are running it. But where are the congregation members that are supporting it, that are down there with the youth participating in this ministry, right? We've talked about growing young before. If you're in the United Methodist Church, especially in the state of Indiana, where there's growing young concepts happening. That's what that project is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Is incorporating those people to do intergenerational ministry, to be a part of that, because that's what it takes for it to be successful.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna say this, and I realize there's some people who might be watching or listening to this who are part of smaller churches, and this might be the case. Okay, but the majority of churches that I've been a part of, okay, I'm going to ask this question: do you expect the pastor to lead the music ministry of the church? Or do you expect the pastor to make sure that every small group is led by the pastor, or every Sunday school is led by the pastor? Because if you're expecting your youth leader to make sure that spiritual formation happens for your 6th through 12th grades, or the children, whatever area you're talking about, then you should expect your pastor to do all that stuff that I just said, because that's basically what the youth person or the children's ministry person is doing.
Yep.
They're leading another kind of small church, in a sense. And it's not the same, but it's sort of the same, if you hear what I'm saying. And we don't have a youth board or anything. There's differences between that. The admin stuff's different. But yeah, I mean, and to expect that is kind of setting up for failure a little bit.
Yeah, I've said this before, but if there is something that is a ministry of the church, it needs to be supported by the people of the church.
Agreed.
It cannot be supported and it cannot be fruitful by the work of just one person. Just
And
like
I'm going
the
to
church
say,
as a whole can't be, but just as the pastor cannot be the only support being for the entirety of the operations of the church or the ministry of the church,
mm-hmm,
any ministry can not only have one support being.
yeah, like, shoot, I just had something here. I lost my train of thought again. Sorry. If it comes back, I'll tell you.
So I think that leads to a deeper discussion too, is the expectation, going back to a little bit of the expectation we put on congregation members, just, as a whole or just in general. Um, some people, sounds like we ask a lot of them, I guess.
Mm-hmm,
Now, I think we have to make a separation of what we're asking of them in the faith, like their faith life and their spiritual growth, and then the expectation of serving, like within the church or within the denomination and such, right? Because I
mm-hmm,
think that, to me, those are two like kind of different barriers of things, or different buckets. Because when we're talking
yeah,
about the expectations of someone's spiritual growth, that's very much spirit led. That's not more, it's fully spirit led, right?
mm-hmm,
I phrased that wrong. That is spirit led, and we kind of walk alongside people with that and how they grow in their faith, when they have questions, when they're struggling,
mm-hmm,
when they are doing study or things like that. That's one thing. The other part of it is the serving part, which that is part of spiritual growth, but that has more to do with the church and the church leaders than someone's personal spiritual path does, I think.
I'm getting what you're saying. Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
for example, let's use this, Jesse. We have annual conference coming up for the United Methodist Church,
yes,
first week of June.
yep,
Every church that has, so that everyone understands this, annual conference is the yearly conference that each conference. So we're in the Indiana conference. We are one conference. Ohio has two conferences, right? We've explained this before in a previous one, but the Indiana conference. So every year we meet and vote on resolutions that would either go to general conference or things that we are able to have the purview to do within our own conference. So we get together, we vote on those, but we also worship, and it's a good time to gather and get together. But when it comes to voting, every church gets to send a pastor that is certified, and I want to make sure that's heard, a certified pastor. So
mm-hmm,
whether it's a local pastor or ordained,
mm-hmm,
um, to annual conference. For every appointed pastor, they get that pastor gets to go as a vote. Now I
okay,
say that on purpose because there's some churches that have an appointed pastor and some that have an assigned pastor. Assigned
yeah,
pastors usually pulpit supply, and they do not have clergy vote.
yeah,
So for every clergy vote, there has to be a 1-for-1 uh, lay member vote.
yep,
Typically, there are not enough lay member votes to equal out clergy votes.
mm-hmm,
So we have what's called equalization members that go. Jesse is an equalization member. And so with that, they go as representatives from the conference in the districts that they serve, in the churches that they serve.
mm-hmm.
Uh, the thing about annual conferences, there is a cost to it.
What?
That's fine. That's not abnormal. There's a registration fee. There's meals you can sign up for. Those aren't too relatively expensive. I mean, we're
Mm-mm.
talking, like for me, for registration and all the meals that I signed up for, it was like $90 or $85 because I bought a T-shirt too because I like
That's not bad.
$85 for registration.
Name another 3-day conference you could sign up for $85.
Right? Exactly.
I mean, really.
That's not bad. Now the conference does help to supplement for equalization members. Like for me, I don't get a per diem because I am pastor and I expected to go. Equalization members get a per diem stipend that the conference will give them maxed out at $176. The issue is, and first I want to say that's great of the conference to do that. They don't have to give
Absolutely.
anything, but they're trying to encourage
Absolutely.
equalization members. The problem is that many people have to get hotels as well. We all know hotels aren't cheap.
That's like one day in a hotel.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's maybe because depending on where it's located at,
Yeah.
you're talking $200,
Yeah.
especially in the summer, big weekends. Anyways,
Yep.
um,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
so after hotel costs, after gas and travel costs, after food, after meals, registration, you're looking at a $500-$600,
Hmm.
$700 expense.
Yep.
One of my pet peeves. And I will say, for anyone that is listening from Noel, I love that our church leadership was completely on board with this. We talked about this when I first got there, and they are completely supportive of this. And this is a pet peeve of mine. And I understand some churches, um, where some churches are, it's harder, but, and I'm going to put a button there. Churches, if you want your people, if you want your congregation members, if you want the people that represent your church, our districts, our denomination to go and have voice and be excited and want to go and be a part of what we're doing as a church, we need to support them. If the conference is willing to put up $176 for every equalization member, even when they don't have to, is to encourage people to do it. But it's costing $500-$600 to go. Obviously, there's a difference there, right?
I'm not the best at math, but I caught that too.
And I could do
Sorry.
the quick math, but if we're talking about people wanting to serve and grow within the church and become leaders within our churches, but we're saying, hey, but to go to this, you have to pay this amount of money. Not everybody can afford that.
Yeah.
And and I'll speak for my church, I'll speak for Noel. They were very foot forward in saying, we will make sure that the money is there so that anyone that wants to be a lay member or equalization member or anything to annual conference, we will make sure that that happens.
That's awesome.
I
That's
feel
cool.
my personal belief is that churches should be doing that. We should be encouraging our members to go.
I mean, I, I okay. So here's the deal. Um, when I first started going to annual conference, I'll just make this personal. And I was at a different church at the time, so this has nothing against Community of Hope at all. Okay. Whenever I first went, um, I was a single income family of five, and I was in youth ministry. And if you don't know anything about youth ministry, you don't get into it for the pay. Let's just put it that way. Okay. Um, or the benefits or anything like that. You just don't. Um, and so for me to go, it was a struggle. Now it was a lot closer than it is now from Muncie. I think it was in Marion at the time. But yeah, yeah, I drove. I drove every day instead of stayed there because I knew I couldn't afford a hotel.
I know people that haven't gone because they couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And if you are leading churches and you hear this and it frustrates you, I I'm apt to say I'm sorry, but I'm also apt to challenge you. You know, we ask people to do so much within our churches and be a part of, our way forward as United Methodist Church, but when it comes to supporting them to go to some of these things, we it's a visual. So you said earlier, when people see the youth place in the basement, that's a visual, right? When
Yeah.
we say, oh, if you want to be able to, if you're going to go as an equalization member, then it's going to cost you this much. That's a visual saying you can do this if you can afford it.
I mean, I'd love to argue with you on that, but I can't.
and that's the same as the nominated position. So each church also has a lay member to annual conference that is a nominated
Yes.
position, but
Yeah.
churches should still be supporting them in helping fund their way to annual conference. They are
Hmm.
going as a representative of your church.
So I'm going to ask this question, Cory, because you said that whenever you first started at Noel, like whenever you first came there, this was something that was important to you that you wanted to make sure that there were funds available for people to go to annual conference.
Absolutely.
Uh, um, is that how do I want to ask? Is the reason for that because you want to make sure that your congregation members know that the church supports them as a whole? Is that part of it?
Yes, and so well, this answer goes a lot deeper too. It's to let people know that they have a place, not just as someone as a butt in the seat on Sunday morning, not just as a number in the offering plate, but you have a voice, you have a place that you can grow here in your faith and be a part of the growth of the church. And we have this systemic problem, and this is church as a whole, but I know for a fact it's been a issue the United Methodist Church, and I don't think there's going to be too many people that disagree overall, that we instill leaders and then they're leaders for 30 years. Positions aren't given
Aha.
up,
Yeah.
things are held, and then you have people coming in behind them, and either younger ones or ones that want to be in leadership positions, that want to be a part of what the church is doing, want to be a part of you know the ins and outs and leadership because they want to support their church, yet they're not given a chance to. And then when they possibly have a chance to, we're saying, oh, but you have to pay $500 to be able to do that.
Yeah, I get it.
That
I get it.
that is not empowering people to do the work of the church.
The roadblock.
Yeah, absolutely, it's a roadblock, and it's an unneeded one. Let's break it down this way. Yeah, $600 does sound like a lot of money. Well, did you know if you put $50 back every month for 12 months, you have $600?
The 5 times 12 plus.
Or
Hey, you're right.
right, it's almost like I know math.
Yeah.
We make this big deal about it, yet we fund these different things within churches, some things that are stagnating, some things we don't need to fund anymore, some things we're not willing to let go of, but yet we're not saying we're willing to fund somebody that is interested in being a part of the future of the church.
Yeah. That's, and it's interesting. And that goes back to the whole personal savings account and all that kind of stuff. You put $5 back every, whatever, you'll grow this eventually. And I think that the tough part about that is we live in such a now society where everything happens so quick. We look at that, the 600 or however much it is, and that's like, and then as a church who might be struggling financially because a lot of them are, um, we talk about the reality here, and that's a tough pill to swallow, but that's where we're at. We look at that and we go, $600. Where are we going to get that at? But if
Here's
you
my
look at
issue though.
but well, hold on. But if you look at the $50 a month, that's not that bad.
Right. uh, you said something though. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump over there, but you
No, you're
said
good. You're
something, and
good.
it's when we look at these churches and we know there's churches struggling financially and such, but here's my underlying issue there. We have churches that, yes, I know they struggle financially, but we're saying we're not willing to fund that for them to be a part of what's happening next in the churches that could possibly help that church grow. But yet those same churches and churches overall are still sitting there on Sunday morning saying, give us your money.
Yeah.
We want you to give us
Yeah.
your money, but we're not willing to pour back into you for your spiritual growth and leadership to help this church move forward, to help this denomination move
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there could be a little pushback in the fact that you're providing the weekly stuff and all that kind of stuff, and it's just not about annual conference. but I get where you're coming from. I do absolutely. I get where you're coming
And
from.
it's not just about annual conference either, though. It's
No,
about
it's
anything. It's
not.
about empowering people, and sometimes it costs money because they
It does.
if you have church members and pastors and leaders in your church and you don't go to anything ever, all you do is just Sunday morning worship and your Wednesday night Bible study. You don't do anything, even annual conference, to help yourself see outside of your echo chamber of church. There's just no way you can grow if you don't
Hmm.
do some conferences or at least go to strategy meetings with other churches and pastors.
Yeah.
If you don't go to annual conference and see what ministries are available, what support, and I hear it all the time, pastors or church leaders will say, well, we tied to the conference. What do they do for us? Go in and engage yourself. There's a lot there that's
There
available.
is.
There really is
There
a
is a
lot.
lot.
And if we're not setting it up for our church leaders to go and be a part of that, what are they going to be able to bring back?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We ask so much from people to give to the church. What are we giving back to the people?
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. Yep. Oh, and the other part about that is this is chances are if you have somebody, if you're leading a church and you have somebody who comes up to you and says, "Hey, I want to go to annual conference. I want to be a part of this. I want to do this." Chances are they're wanting to lead.
Yes.
And
Yes.
part of our job as leaders in the church is to develop leaders in the church.
What's really cool with annual conference, what you see happen is now when you go to that next ad council meeting, they'll say you had your lay member to annual conference and equalization member there.
Mhm.
What's so impactful for pastors at that moment is it's not just on the shoulders of the pastor to regurgitate, to lead forward, to talk into what can help the church from the conference level. Now you have a
Mhm.
lay leader, you have people in leadership that when it's equalization members, you have them there as well from their points of view, from their insights to say, hey, check this out. We have a really cool
Mhm.
opportunity for a ministry like this. Hey, look at this.
Yep.
Look what these churches are doing. They're similar setup as we are. Look how they went about this. Maybe we can look at doing something like that.
Mhm.
Ideas are formed. Ministry is renewed. Revitalization happens within
Mhm.
churches.
Yeah. Well, and I want to pause just for a minute. We're talking a lot about from the United Methodist point of view, okay?
Right.
But there's Lutheran synods, there's the Episcopal diocese, there's the Presbytery if you're Presbyterian, there's youth meetings if you're non-denominational. There are conferences and stuff that you can go to regardless of what church you're a part of, and that's what we're talking about. Is
Yes.
you're talking about we're basically talking about making sure as the church that we're growing and we're empowering the church.
And
Yeah.
here's the thing: it used to be that happened a lot.
Yeah.
This is a newer issue being faced for the most part. But again, it also goes back to that stranglehold leadership, I think, sometimes. And I'm not trying to say
Yeah.
that to be mean, but it's the truth.
It is.
There's if we're not empowering people to become new leaders and asking existing leaders to rotate off and mentor and train up and help those young leaders will eventually say, you know what, never mind.
I'll go lead something else.
Yes.
Yep.
And then we ask, well, where's everybody at? You know,
Yep.
why aren't we seeing the growth? Why are we seeing? Because the church didn't live up to our expectations. That we, whether you like,
Yep.
whether as a church leader you like it or not, as a pastor, whether you like it or not, congregation members have expectations of you.
Yep.
You have to be willing. Now, some of them are wild. Some of them are like, okay, look, that's a little crazy.
Yeah.
It's okay, but
Yeah.
some of them are valid.
Yep.
We have to be willing to listen to it.
Well, and here's another thing that I want to point out. Okay. Let's say we're talking to somebody. Let's say somebody listening right now is a 50-year-old trustee member at a United Methodist Church. Let's say, for instance. Okay. Let's say they're the chair of the trustee committee. Okay. Let's just say. or the a part of trustees that is the governing board or ad council or whatever you want to call it. Okay. There's going to be a day whenever you're not going to want to do that anymore.
Yep.
It may be 20 years down the road, but there's going to be a day whenever you're going to want to give that up and take a step back, spend time with grandkids, whatever, play golf, whatever you want to do. Okay.
Right.
You're going to want to step back from that. Okay. If you aren't, if you aren't mentoring somebody in that role, and especially somebody who's interested in doing that role, you're setting yourself up to never say, well, I've served my time at somebody else's time, which is another thing that I really don't like to hear in ministry. But I get it. There's sometimes you need to take a step back. I get that. And the thing about it is that um and we talk about the tough stuff. We need to put our ego aside and say, you know what? There's somebody else that can do this too.
Yes.
There is.
Absolutely.
And as much as I don't want to use the ego word, I mean, we can kind of get there. You know,
Oh, yeah.
I've been doing this for 20 years. There's nobody else that can do this as good as me. Well, maybe so, but there you also have tunnel vision whenever you've done something for 20 years. And if you bring somebody else in who's gotten fresh ideas, listen to them because there's more than one way to skin a cat.
No one person should hold a leadership role for 20 years, ever.
I agree with that, but
That's right.
we live
It's
in
just not,
reality.
it's just not healthy, right?
Yeah, it isn't.
It's just not healthy. We say all this to say, we're not, again, we talked earlier about the uplifting, the glory of faith. And this isn't to beat anybody down, but it's just for us to have those honest conversations. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, how
No,
can
that's
we be better?
I wasn't trying to shame anybody
Right.
in that role.
But
I
no, I'm
was
just
just
saying
saying,
if people hear it that way,
yeah, yeah.
this is an encouragement to if you are struggling in certain ways or your church is struggling or you're looking for ways to get people involved or empower people to become leaders and step it. These are some ideas to think about of how can we change that up a little bit? How
Hmm.
can we? I know for a fact that uh, we never have enough equalization members. Are we
We
talking to
don't.
people about that? Or are we saying there was a miscommunication with one of my congregation members that wanted to be an equalization member when because the deadline was like November 4th last year for annual conference this year,
Hmm.
and I was sending stuff out and I didn't realize they were on vacation, and I felt bad because they wanted to be a part of it, and then the deadline was
Hmm.
missed, and the conference is very strict on those deadlines, and I felt bad about that because I knew they wanted to do it, and I didn't realize they were on vacation, and I sent them an email about it.
Yeah.
Could I have called? Yes. I didn't realize that. I own that mistake, but I know
Hmm.
for going into next year, they want to be an equalization member. I want to empower them to be an
Yep.
equalization member because they are taking an active interest in wanting to be a part of what comes next for not just our church, but our denomination. Right. And
It's
so,
awesome.
but that also goes with any denomination, like Jesse was saying, right? We have to be intentional about giving voice to the people that want to have voice, that want to step into these roles.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so while we have expectations as church leaders, as churches, we have expectations of people to support and care for the church, support and care for the people, to be a part of the ministries, to be a part of service, to be a part of Bible studies and youth groups and children's ministries. We have all these expectations. We have to recognize our expectations that they have of us.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I want to do something really quick.
Yes.
I think everybody listening, we need to take a big deep breath in and out because we hit you with a lot. And I think that we need to recognize that being a good leader is pointing out some negative and
Yes.
some correction. And I think that we all get pigeonholed a little bit or tunnel vision or whatever you want to say. And this all comes from love from me and Cory.
Yep.
And I know I speak for Cory when I say that because he just said, yep. And because part of recording this and being a good leader as a podcast member is to be able to speak some of this truth as well, and to go, hey, if anybody listens to this, and it might be a realization, and that's fine. So just felt like I needed to say that.
Yeah, we had to be honest with ourselves and say, okay, where we failed, and I don't say failed, but where we fallen short.
Yes.
Because we don't do everything perfect. If we did everything perfect, then we wouldn't have to have these conversations and have these issues. We wouldn't be looking at it from the aspect of we need to do better or do more to help these people, right? We we
Mm-hmm.
just we just wouldn't,
Yeah.
and that's okay to say that.
Yep.
We just have to be honest in it.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Agreed.
well, we're glad everybody was with us today. Appreciated.
Absolutely.
Love doing
And
this.
we do. Yes, we do.
Uh, be on the lookout. We're going to be posting, so we record and then I like to bring these podcasts to you guys. So be on the lookout because coming up, there might be something special from annual conference. We tried to do it last year and it didn't work out, but
Oh yeah.
I know there's and I always say that because there's some big stuff coming up at annual conference this year, and we'll kind of
There
break
are.
that down as we get closer to annual conference,
Yeah.
which is June 4th through the 7th. But be on the lookout for that as well because that'll be a fun one because that means Jesse and I would get to be together in person and
Is
do
it June 4th through the 7th?
Wednesday to Saturday. I'm going up Wednesday, so
Oh yeah. I was thinking for some odd reason I had the 8th in my head, but that's the
that's
Sunday
a
after. I
Sunday.
forgot.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
won't be there. I'll be in.
Yep. Yep. I was well. I get to preach that. I get to preach that week. So
Hey, well,
hey,
listeners, we're glad that you're with us. We hope you can take something from this. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to Jesse or I. Reach out to both of us. Let us know. We'd love to talk with you on that. And until next time, on a day in life.
bye everybody.